enforcement to be present there. And so some of our students have gone with these internships, and they're basically there riding in the cars or doing some reports, filing some things. Um, right now, with what happened with our government and with the state level, for example, well, they were not going to be prosecuting people with low amounts of misdemeanors like marijuana. So they one of our interns actually was out there filling out all this paperwork and correcting all this so that way these people could get cleared and not have to go to get incarcerated for those minor issues. So again, I mean, those are kind of experiences that our students will be getting. Most of our internships, I know this is the first department that I'm looking at, most of them require a certain amount of hours. So here what you see is 150 hours. Other internships are 100, 300, just depends on what department it is and what discipline it is. Here is some contact information. I think y'all will have all this information, so I'm just going to bypass this. One of the questions that gets asked quite a bit is, well, what about careers? What would I be doing? And like I said, you'll be working with these agencies that I just showed you, but some of the other agencies that students sometimes think about getting jobs in, that some of our students have got: park ranger, police officer, community relation officer, criminal investigator, and of course security officers. And you could kind of see this. You all think you should have this as well, but it kind of gives you a little bit of a range of what to expect once you come out with a criminal justice or criminology degree. Um, is there any questions with the criminal justice, criminology? I'm going to wait for a couple seconds. If not, I'm going to jump right into public administration. Public administration and policy, criminology, criminal justice, social work, demography, which the two departments that I don't talk about, are downtown because they need to be right at the heart of where all their agencies, where they could work, where they could be at, the offices. So those 3, 4 departments are downtown. They do have a presence at the downtown campus. I'm not sure whether you know about when people refer to as the downtown campus, that's the campus right there on basically I-10, right by Mi Tierra restaurant, by the marketplace. It's downtown, so people refer to that campus as the downtown campus. Our other campus is the one at 1604 and I-10 practically, and that we refer to that as the main campus. Main just because that's where the president's office is at, so they refer to that as the main campus. Public administration programs, you could see the list of different programs, whether it's a Bachelor's of Public Administration Policy, minors, and masters. Again, you could enter as a bachelor's and then move up to a master's. They do offer minors just because if you are having certain courses already being admitted, if you take like 18 more hours, that's like either 6 to 9 additional classes. You could minor in something else and have like a specialty, so to speak. So that's kind of the areas, the programs available for public administration. So what do? In public administration, we actually have had quite a bit of our students come out and definitely stay in government in some kind of policy making. Some of them have started nonprofit or positions or offices. These are all of our recent, or some of our recent graduates that have come out of UTSA. And you could see they were tremendous students. They were very involved in the community as bachelors. What you see here are most of our students, except for that first one, which is a master's of public administration. The other individuals are all bachelors. So you could definitely come out with a job possibility prospect coming out with public administration and policy. Think about all the changes that are going on right now with the COVID-19. These are the people that are actually getting the experts, whether it's scientists, medical fields, getting that information out to the public, out to us, right? They're the ones that are advising the mayor. They're the ones that are out there speaking to people, right, that perhaps are not getting the message, right? So that's kind of what public administration and policy entails. Just like criminology and criminal justice, There are internships. We work with quite a bit of communities within San Antonio and beyond. We have had people go to DC and have their internships there. So they're kind of not necessarily studying abroad, but they're outside of the state of Texas and getting some kind of internship experience. We, like I said, students in this area do get to be working with leaders in our community, and that's why sometimes they end up getting jobs with the leaders in the community, whether it's Windcrest. Windcrest is a city here in San Antonio. It's like a little suburb out in the East Coast, up in East Coast, on the east side of San Antonio. And so that's, like I said, we have people working. This is actually the picture on your left as you're looking at the screen. The one with the young lady with the monkeys. She's actually doing a news cast with individuals, and so they had a little kind of a episode where they're bringing in people from the animal facility. I think it was like a local zoo or something like that that they were bringing in. So she was actually being recorded and having like a little airtime on the news stations here locally in San Antonio. Like I said, there's a big push for us to have to ensure that you folks as students have jobs. So there's this idea of college to career. So we want you to come into it as a student, get your training, and come out and go into a career, not to a job, but to a career, something that you're passionate about. And so we have like I said, quite a bit of partnerships within the community, whether it's within civil engagement. And so we are constantly investing on our network, on individuals to continue to expand our agencies that we work with. So whether it's farmers in agriculture, whether it's in some kind of town hall meeting, or even with if you're bilingual, you could be able to go to a different network here in San Antonio. Here in San Antonio, it's a Hispanic serving city. We are a Hispanic serving institution. And so we have quite a bit of individuals that are bilingual, and they could actually get those kind of word out, whatever information they have to be able to do that. So like I said, it's kind of redundant, but it's very important how important it is for us to continue to work with our community. Right now, we have people in public administration that are working in partnership with master students of social work, and they're getting information out. They're going out to the hospitals, providing some kind of assistance. They're giving them PPE, protective equipment to these individuals, and they're doing research with them. Obviously, with schools, we're not doing anything right now, but you could see that kind of interest, that investment that we have from UTSA to give back to our community. Here are some lists, and y'all should have this on y'all's app, but it's basically kind of a snapshot. I'm going to have this for all the departments. You saw it for criminology. You're going to see it for public administration, and you're going to see it throughout my presentation. But it gives you a little idea of what people make in the first year compared to the fifth year, compared to 10th year, and who are the employers, where are they working at, and what are they working as. Kinesiology, this is my home department. In kinesiology, we have quite a bit of individuals that are involved. Kinesiology was one of the largest and fastest growing departments. We have roughly about 2,500 students. So it's quite a bit large as a department, and therefore we've kind of adjusted it so that way, and that's why kinesiology, health, and dietetics kind of split. And it made sense, right? Because kinesiology was huge, health was huge. They had about 800 students. The dietetic program I'll talk about here in a second in my presentation later. There were quite a bit of students in those areas too, so that's why it made sense for us to kind of split those departments. But kinesiology, sociology, and psychology are probably the biggest departments in our college, and that's because most of them are like wanting to do pre-med, physical therapy, and things like that. So that's where those students fall into those departments. Under kinesiology, you have exercise physiology, kinesiology and health sciences, athletic training, and physical education. Along with these, especially with athletic training, we really specify this and make it, we are very intentional to tell our students, because a lot of our students want to go into pre-med or pre-physical therapy, physical therapy, PT. And so it's very competitive in those areas, whether it's in the medical field or physical therapy, to get into those schools. So we always advise students, especially if you're going to go in that route, to take the athletic training concentration, that degree program, mainly because it gives you all the background, the prerequisites for those schools, for those additional schools. But it also, if you stay, and the trend is for our students, they usually don't get accepted the first time they apply. So if they apply in their junior, senior year, it takes them a while. So by the time they finish and by the time they get accepted, they're already coming out with a degree from UTSA with athletic training. We do have a couple of other things available in that area. We call them 4+1, meaning that it takes you 4 years to get a bachelor's. But if you take another year with a few classes in there, you could come out with a master's. And so we advise students in athletic training to get a master's because, and if you do it with our program, it's a 4+1. So that's kind of what we want, because with a master's, you could go across state lines. If you just come out with a bachelor's, you could only practice athletic training within the state of Texas. And sometimes your team, your sport gets invited to a tournament outside the state of Texas, or they make it to playoffs or make it to nationals. And if you're an athletic trainer for that program, you're not allowed to go if you just have a bachelor's, because you're going outside state lines. So that's why with a master's, you could go across. We also have a certificate as well, another program, and for cardiac rehab, and it falls under exercise physiology and athletic training, just because of the prerequisites and the classes that the training that you will need. And with that, we are working with the hospitals here in San Antonio. There's quite a bit of them. There's quite a bit of different hospitals, and we work with those hospitals for people to get kind of that training, so that way they could come out with a kind of like a certificate in cardiac rehab. And so you're almost, like I said, guaranteeing a job for yourself if you were to come under those. Kinesiology and health science, that's kind of like our general major. So like if you're taking exercise physiology and you're taking these harder classes, whether it's biomechanics and things like that, and you're not meeting the criteria for you to advance in your degree, then the general major, which is the kinesiology and health science, will fall into that. Physical education is kind of like a coach and teacher. So we do advise students that are going in physical education to kind of have a minor. So you're not just going to be a coach, but you could have a minor in something else, special education, bilingual, math, science, something like that. The other thing that we do advise is for students, when they do that with physical education, is to just ensure that they do have those minors, because that would help them get a job in one of our school districts. Most of the students here in San Antonio at UTSA that come out with a physical education, they are kind of placed like an internship. It's kind of, we call it student teaching or clinical teaching, and they got to do it for a whole year. And they fall in love with the school districts here. They enjoy the school districts here, so they want to get here and they want to stay here. And like I said, most of the students here want to stay here, so it's kind of competitive. So you kind of want to put yourself above that. The other way that you can put yourself above all the other applicants is having some kind of certificate as well. And there is certificates in physical education. So in other words, you take a few, like 4 classes, and those 4 classes could be specializing yourself in a specific sport. So for example, you could take a coaching football. So let's say you want to be a football coach, and you're really specifically you're getting a program in physical education, and you want to be a football coach, a high school football coach, and you were to get that, we would recommend you to get that certificate, so that way you would be trained to not only be a quarterback coach, for example, that's a position in football, but you could also be a coach for safeties, because that whole semester you're going to be looking at every X and O's, all the details, all the different positions in that. I'm looking at my time. Let me just kind of run through this. So human biology, physical measurements, exercise program, musculoskeletal injuries, That's kind of what we're looking at in kinesiology. Like I said, there's different ways that we could do these, the certificates of management, multidisciplinary studies that's outside of our college. And you have a multidisciplinary studies is students that kind of don't know exactly what they want to do, so they take a little bit of classes in our area and then take a little bit of classes from other departments as well. And then, of course, the honors program. We do have in this department, there's obviously there's be partnerships with schools, there's partnerships with the health field, whether it's with the hospitals. We do have partnerships with the military base here in San Antonio. We've had people go and do their internships at the Center for the Intrepid. These are individuals that are military that have had some kind of injuries, amputations, and things like that. And actually, our students have been very successful in PT schools, just because when they get those kind of experiences at working at BAMC at the medical fields here in the military, when their internships, when they apply for PT schools, the PT schools look at them and say, "Wow, that's something that's really stands that applicant out from all the other 200 applicants that we have." So having those kind of experiences is very beneficial for our students. And then, of course, we have research, and then we work with the Health Science Center as well. Here's just like I said, a snapshot of our department, our areas of our specialties, how much they'll be earning, and it depends on what area it is, right? So you can't necessarily make a comparison of someone that's working at Northside School District, which is one of the bigger school districts in San Antonio, compared to Hardendale, which is a smaller school district. Or you can compare someone that is working at Toyota, being I forget what the actual title is from one of our students, but he's actually working at Toyota, and he's basically making sure that whether they're working on the assembly lines, whether they're taking breaks and things like that, making sure biomechanically they're not making themselves susceptible to injuries. So he's over there working in Toyota. He obviously is going to be earning different amount of pay compared to a school teacher in Harlandale or Edgewood School District. The coordinated program in dietetics, I'm just going to refer to it as either nutrition or dietetic program. In this area, it's a very small cohort. So what I mean by cohort is that we only accept a set number of students. So that is about 15 students per year. You heard that right, per year, 12 to 15 students per year. And the idea there is that these 12 to 15 students go from early on, from the first day of class, all the way till they become a senior, and then they actually go into a master's program. So it's a 4+1 program. So they will come out with a master's of dietetics. So these students are going to be working in different agencies, whether it's school districts, being a nutritionist for a school, or it could be at the hospital, it could be at some nursing home. So they have quite a bit of those experiences. These students, like I said, it's 12 to 15 that get admitted into the program, and it's because of their accreditation. Accreditation is like who sets the standard. And they set a standard, and we have to meet that standard. And based on that standard, one of the biggest things here for this program is their experiences, right? Their junior and senior year, they have to be out there in the field. And because of that, the accredited agency limits how many are allowed to be out there. So it's the same thing with the PT schools, right? Physical therapy. They're only allowed to be out in the community for only send out so many students, and therefore that's what limits how many they get to accept. It's the fastest growing profession. They're working in different capacities within different agencies. You could see how important it is. I mean, everyone has to eat, especially now with diabetes. That's pretty prevalent here in the United States. You could see the need for these individuals with dietetic experiences. So the credentials, whether it's RD or RDN, an LD. So again, all of our students will get to the point where they will have to be able to apply for a test and hopefully pass that state board exam, so to speak. So like I said, we do provide these experiences. They do have they call it practicums and internships. So they need about 1,200 hours, and it's spread out throughout your whole career here at UTSA as being a student. So the coursework, that's kind of an example of the coursework that they'll be getting. And so, like I said, they have different places where they will be working at in different capacities. Um, I think clinical, community partners. Here's, like I said, some partners that we have. You could see they vary across different disciplines. Here's an example of their what they make, who has been employing our students. Psychology. Psychology is one of our bigger programs as well. And like I said, most of our students that are in psychology want to aspire to become a physical therapist or in some kind of field in that way. Um, so they look at behavioral and mental processes. That's what psychology is about: social, cognitive, developmental, or experimental psychology. Um, there's a lot of reasons why students pick psychology, right? Here's some top 10 reasons why people select a degree in psychology, whether it's because of the variety of careers. I mean, there's quite a bit of careers that could be within the psychology field. This depends on your training. Um, it's very rewarding sometimes because you could actually work with individuals and help them progress in their mental state, in their physical state, right? Motivation, intention between that. Um, Here are some careers. People in our fields have had different capacities. They've worked with, I mean, we've had people from psychology actually be behavioral coach in bilingual Spanish. So there was a need for individuals to be able to get that behavioral changes for individuals, because we all know that when you're being tested, you would adhere to that program. So if I was going to do some kind of diet regimen, I would stick to that diet regimen. But as soon as it 30 days, I mean, 90 days, 3 months pass by, then it's kind of harder for me to adhere to that. So again, behaviorally, kind of like being like a life coach. I think that's the term that YouTube and these social media people use is life coach. So we've had quite a bit of our students be in those kind of capacities. Um, Public health was used to be part of the kinesiology, nutrition, and health program, like I've said, but we did split those up. So now it stands alone. It has a BS in health, and BS means bachelor's in health and bachelor's in public health. You could see the different kind of emphasis that it has on. This is probably one field that is going to probably grow tremendously, especially after COVID-19. And the reason is because right now we're all worried about our health. We're worried. Do we need to wear mask here in San Antonio? We're going to have to, in the state of Texas, we're going to have to wear masks starting on Monday. You cannot keep within that social distance of 6 feet. So these individuals are going to be the ones that are going to be focusing, and they're going to be trained to look at how the community interacts, how does the individual interact with the community, what can we do to prevent, whether it's good nutrition or prevent some kind of illness, some illness, virus, bacteria. How do we control weight and things like that? We have quite a bit of partnerships, whether it's with the American Heart Association, with cancer, with the health centers here in San Antonio. So you could see, even with all the departments that I've mentioned, we have quite a bit of partnerships. We are really very intentional about being connected to our community. Sociology is another area that is probably going to be growing in interest, just because of the nature of sociology, right? It's that looking at social networks, right? Looking at the cultural influence, the dynamics involved in that. So, I mean, some of the things that could come out of sociology, especially after COVID-19, is what's going to be the new norm, right? I mean, these are sociologists. That's what those individuals are studying, right? They look at the protocols, the the paradigms that are shifting from one generation to the next. From here on out, we're going to understand what a pandemic is, right? When something happens, when something drastically happens, how it affects our culture. We had not really had that big of an experience before, right? I mean, we've had illnesses, right? And sociology majors look at that, right? They look at these relationships, right? Before it used to be race and ethnics, right? The gender, religion, society, the stratification of social economic statuses, the issue with criminology, right? Why are more people prone to be more behaving in acts that get them to violate laws and therefore they become criminals? So these are the areas that sociology looks at, right? And they look at behavior, a very behavioralistic standpoint, right? Observations of individuals. And like I said, this area might grow and expand if interest, especially with the COVID-19. Um, so here are some research. There's quite a bit of research going on with sociology. There's a lot of mental health. I had an article that we were going to try to publish with a sociologist major, a PhD, one of my colleagues. And so we were looking at religion and locus of control, like what is the individual's perception of what they have to control? Does that affect their mental state? And especially right now with people's anxiety and stress with the COVID-19, right? We can't really control this COVID-19. So we could control how we behave, whether it's wearing masks or in having gloves, washing our hands. But even then, right? So how does that affect the stress of individuals? Here is the examples of where they've gone, how much they're making, and who we've been working with. The last part that I wanted to talk about is centers and institutes. These are a little bit different. I know these terms might not be very familiar with y'all. Centers and institutes, think of them as offices, right? So all of our departments have a focus of research, right, of a discipline. Well, a center and institutes are a subset of that. They serve a specific capacity, sometimes within a department, and usually our centers and institutes here in HCap are diverse and they encompass quite a bit of departments. So we have an Institute for Demographic and Socioeconomic Research. This specific area looks at research at the individuals, right? The demography of individuals and socioeconomic. In fact, our previous interim dean was the state demographer for the state of Texas. His institute was looking at how people respond to certain things within the state of Texas. So the research that he was doing before all this COVID-19 was, of course, census, right? Who was responding to the census? Who was reporting how many household members were in a particular zip code and things like that. So his task was to do that and report back to the state of Texas. We have a Center for Policy Studies, right? They're looking at how to interact with agencies, whether it's law enforcement, with the court systems, whether it's with the hospitals, and looking at how they interact with them. We have a Center for Community-Based and Applied Health Research. This center is looking at quite a bit of interest of like diabetes. So they're bringing quite a bit of money to look at research for this, right? They're looking at people with low physical activity and that are diabetic. How can we help them overcome this disease, this self-autoimmune disease that people have? Institute for Health Disparities and Research, that's what it is disparities. So why do some individuals, this institute looks at why are some individuals more prone to have certain health conditions as opposed to other groups of society or culture. So most of these centers are downtown, and it makes sense, right? These are centers that have to be, or locations where they have to be tied to the community. And the closer you are, the better it is. So those centers are tied to there. But we do have some centers that are up here at the main campus. So what you see there, the picture on the left is an aerial picture of the main camp or part of the main campus. There's a main building. I won't be able to, I don't know if you could see it on my slides here on my cursor. but the main building is right there, and that's where the president's office is at, and that's why is referred to as the main building, main campus. The one on the right is the picture, a narrow view of the downtown campus. So those are our two campuses, and like I said, they are house some of our departments. Not only do they house our departments and our research labs, but they also house our institute and our centers. All right, I think I have enough. I should have enough time for Q&A. So does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Cordova, yes, there's been a few students who have been asking some questions, and thank you guys for the questions. One question that we got was how competitive is the athletic training program?
So it's not about being the athletic program you could apply, and the criteria there is GPA. So you could come in. Obviously, you don't have a GPA. So if you get accepted to UTSA, you could come in with the athletic training program. The question is your credentials, right? So once you come in and you get accepted, you could take that program and you could keep moving up towards that degree. But if you cannot maintain a 3.0 GPA in certain classes within a certain semester of your career, like usually your sophomore going into your junior year, then it's going to be recommended for you to either retake those courses to bump up your GPA or move over to a different concentration to a different program, which will be like the general kinesiologist major. So you could definitely do that. You could move in different areas, different departments. Does that address your question? The one that is competitive, truly competitive, is the dietetic program. Like I said, they only are allowed to accept the max 15 students. So when you apply for the dietetic program, you're actually going to have an interview, and you need to be spot on. You need to be dressed appropriate and have done your homework, meaning make sure that this is your field, because they're going to ask you questions about that. They're going to ask, and they're going to be very selective. It's just like the PT. It's like being accepted to a PT school, physical therapy
Mr.
school.
Cordova,
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, that is one of the questions. Let me go down the list because I wrote down the questions, and that was one of the questions about dietetics. Okay. I mean, I guess you can elaborate on that too. There is a student who is interested. She applied for that, so she just wanted a little bit of information about the application process and the selection. If you can elaborate a little bit more on that.
So if you were going to get into that program, the 4+1, so when you come out with a master's of dietetics, then that's going to be very selective. If you do not get accepted, because like I said, they only accept 12 to 15 per year. So in the fall semester is when they accept their cohorts. If you do not get accepted, you could still come out with a degree in nutrition and dietetics, but it's not going to be a master's of dietetics and nutrition. So you could still come in that route, but you're just going to come out with a 4-year degree of nutrition and dietetics. So you could still take your board exams to see if you could qualify for get registered for being a dietitian, but you will not be able to be a master's of dietetics.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The other question was about minors. So if a student is in your college, your academic college, and they want to minor in a different department outside of the college, could they do that?
Yeah. So we always recommend, especially for places or careers that require that it's kind of competitive. And when I say kind of competitive, it's when you go for an interview. Right? So if you're going for an interview and there's a lot of applicants, how do you set yourself apart? Well, one way is through minors and certificates. A minor is usually 18 hours. So you need to so think of a class, one course is about 3 course credit. So you would need about 9 classes. A certificate sometimes goes from 18 as low as 12 hours. So you could either take 4 to 6 or 8 more classes. Um, and so the question becomes, how can you make yourself a better candidate compared to the person sitting next to you in that lobby when you're being interviewed? So one way is a minor or certificate. So we really encourage students that if you're taking classes and all you need to do is take a couple more classes, we really encourage it because it's not really going to delay your graduation, because you could take 1 extra class or 2 or even summer and not, it doesn't really affect you on a semester by semester class time wise, right? It's just like 1 extra class or 2 extra classes, or in the summer taking those classes. So you could take be in the kinesiology, be in sociology, be in psychology, and have a minor. But it makes sense a lot of times if your minor is within a certain area, like I was talking about. Let's say that you wanted to be a coach, and you were really passionate about being a football coach. Well, it makes sense for you to get a minor in something that is really in need in schools. Because what is needed in schools is not necessarily a football coach. They have quite a bit of those. What they need is maybe a special education teacher, a bilingual teacher. So it makes a lot of sense for our students to take a couple more classes and get a minor in bilingual education. And now you get hired for, let's say that your clinical teaching was in Northside and you really enjoy Brandeis. Brandeis is a high school here, and you really want to work in Brandeis, and you like the community here in the area close to Brandeis, this high school. Well, if you're going to be a football coach and that's all that you have, you might not have that job position available in Brandeis as a football coach. But if they might have a position available, and they probably will have a position available for bilingual teacher. And so if you have a bilingual minor, then you could go in there and be a bilingual teacher. And now being in with now that you're hired, now you go and say, hey, I actually want to be a coach as well. Can y'all do that? And oh yeah, you could go and we'll give you a stipend for being a coach. So now that's how you get in. And like I said, that could be the case for any of our other degrees. So like I said, especially in the school districts, we know bilingual and special ed is what is needed. They need those teachers. So for us, like I said, if you're going to be physical education, it's good for you to go do that.
Thank you so much for that. One more question. We do some students are asking about the physical therapy schools, because you mentioned at the beginning. What PT schools do our UTSA students end up going to? If you can answer that question.
Say that again.
What PT school or physical therapy schools do UTSA students end up going to after they're completed here?
I laugh because it's any school that allows you to get in. That's the answer. So some of our students, they wanted to stay here in San Antonio at the Health Science Center. So they had to wait, I think, almost 1.5 years to get accepted. And so they actually came out with a degree with us, and they were working, and they kept on applying. And then they got accepted here at school here. So PT schools there's a few of them across the state of Texas, and they all get accepted in all of those schools. Sorry. They get accepted in all those schools, and it's whichever school accepts you. And so, like I said, we have a few all throughout.
Perfect. Ileana Davis had asked a question about student training for UTSA. Would she need to talk to the kinesiology department, or who would she contact or talk to if she was interested in student training?
So what do you mean by student? I don't know what she means by student training.
I'm assuming as a student trainer like for athletics.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Our athletic training program is led by Dr. Oyama, Saki Oyama. And so when you start getting in that, typically there's what she always says is that, especially as a freshman, you could go in there and just kind of observe. And then as you progress in your training in your classes, going from freshman to sophomore to junior, and junior to senior, then more responsibilities are going to be brought up upon you. We've had students that are hired, um, and some are volunteer, and some are just observing, right? So there's different tiers, right? As you move as a freshman, first year, you're probably not going to be wrapping some athlete's foot, right? You're not going to be wrapping some injury or whatever, and you're probably not going to be traveling with the team. As you move up through your training in classes in the degree, then more responsibilities can be given to you. And as more responsibility goes into you and more accountability, then sometimes some of our students are paid in the athletic department. So that's going to be something that we work out. And some of our students end up becoming like they do their internships there as well. So some are paid, some are not paid. So you just have to get in there and then depending on students, because we can't say, as a sophomore, you're going to go in there because not all of our students are really passionate and don't have the time to do that too. Some of our students are working full time, they're married and things like that. And so they don't have time to be traveling with the team or working with the team because our teams are athletes, um, depending on sport and with the season, what time of the season it is. Sometimes they're working out earlier in the morning. Sometimes they're working out late at night. Sometimes they're working out on the weekends. So it just depends on the student. So if the student shows interest, we'll get them those experiences. We'll get them plugged in.
Okay, so one final question that came through is about transfer. So can a transfer student declare a kinesiology degree with a concentration in athletic training automatically, or will they have to go through a certain process to declare that major?
I'm not. You have to talk to your advisor for that. But my understanding, this is my understanding, they could come in with a transferring and they could jump right in. I mean, just as long as they have. I mean, they might have to take some prerequisite courses, but they could come in and they could declare. That's not. That shouldn't be an issue, to my understanding. But check with your
Okay.
advisor. But that should not be. You could come in and declare what you want to do and go these pathways. So that's not a. I don't think that's an issue.
Right. So just to add to that, with my experience working with the Alamo colleges here locally in town, students would have to fulfill prerequisites that are needed for that program. So if you haven't taken those prerequisites, you're not able, you can apply into the program that you're trying to get into, but it doesn't mean that you'll be in that major right away. You'll have the advisor for that college, that academic college. It's just you can declare after you fulfill those requirements. So yes, that's correct. Um, so that pretty much concludes our presentation. Does anybody have any other questions that they'd like to ask before we conclude? If not, what I would recommend to everyone, those of you who have not applied to admissions to UTSA, I would recommend that you start the application process. We do have another presentation for freshmen and transfer admissions here at 11 o'clock that we will begin soon. And then another resource that I'd like for you guys to consider is to download the guidebook app for UTSA Day. We have that. If you're an Apple phone user, or if you are, if you're using, the Google apps, whatnot, if you're an Android user, you can go to the store to download the UTSA guidebook app, and it'll show you all the presentations that we are utilizing today for UTSA Day. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me. My name is Victor Natera. I'm going to drop my email address down here as well. If you have any other questions, you can contact me and I will communicate any information to you. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank y'all.
Bye. Thank y'all. Enjoy the day.
Bye.